Those who shot and killed a suspected armed robber remain behind bars tonight after being charged with murder and defeating the ends of justice at the Krugersdorp Magistrates Court.
A few months ago, this footage captured by CCTV cameras in Krugersdorp caused a stir around the nation. But for many residing in the city, violent crime doesn't surprise them. Over the past 5 years, the city has seen a dramatic increase in crime, which has left many residents feeling like prisoners in their own city. The residents blame the increase in violent crime on the influx of drugs within the city center, which they believe is also fueling numerous heinous crimes on the West Rand, such as human trafficking and child prostitution. But how did it get to this?
Krugersdorp is named after Paul Kruger. Paul Kruger was the 5th president of the Republic of South Africa, which was basically the old Transvaal province, a little bit bigger than what Gauteng is now. It started off as a mining town on one of the farms. Farm's name was Paardekraal or Paardeplaats. They discovered gold and then the town started. Een van die ander groot gevalle wat in Krugersdorp gebeur het en in die land en ook, maar Krugersdorp self het een van die grootste konsentrasiekampe gehad waar vrouens en kinders aangehou was gedurende die Anglo-Boereoorlog, waar die Engelse en die boere teen mekaar baklei het. En dit was nie net blankes wat in die konsentrasiekamp was nie, maar daar was ook heel wat swart mense en kleerlingmense in die konsentrasiekamp wat ook swaar gekry het. Die vrouens en die kinders was maar basies daar aangehou sodat hulle nie die boere kon help om kos by hulle uit te kry of ammunisie by hulle uit te kry nie. En dit was moeilik vir die mense in die konsentrasiekamp en hulle doodgegaan aan siektes en aan honger en in die moeilike omstandighede waar daar was. En dan ook die onsekerheid, hulle het nie aldag geweet waar hulle mans is en waar hulle baklei teen die Engelse nie. Die konsentrasiekampe het 'n groot invloed op die boere gehad en op die oorlog, want die boere het geweet dat die vrouens en die kinders is besig om swaar te kry in die konsentrasiekampe. Hulle het geweet hulle is besig om te sterf in die konsentrasiekampe. So hulle het eintlik half gevoel, mismoedig begin voel en gevoel, jy weet, maar is dit die moeite werd om aan te gaan met die oorlog en hulle families te verloor en dan na die oorlog terug te kom na niks toe nie. Wat hulle op die ou einde basies laat voel het, laat hulle maar eerder oorgee en kyk wat hulle kan red en hoeveel hulle families weer kan red en uit die konsentrasiekampe uitkry. I was born in Krugersdorp and I grew up in Krugersdorp. So I've been here more than 50 years already. It's always been a beautiful town. Remembering when I was still small, it was a very lively town. And everybody just worked together, and it was a beautiful town in those days.
No, but back then it was very different. I remember I was born in 1964. Long before any of you guys were born. Back then it was a mining town. My dad was a train driver. My mum worked in a local pharmacy. The mine dumps covered by, in the slime dams covered by squatter camps used to be our playing ground. We've got the Zamas mining now illegally. We went down those same mine shafts and playing as kids. We had very little crime, if not zero crime.
Years ago, I have very fond memories of, it had the most beautiful park, you know, with the slides and so on, but it was something out of this world. There's a skateboarding park and we grew up, you know, going there over the weekends. But sadly, over the years, there's nothing left of it.
Oh, well, there's actually no comparison. 20 years ago, Krugersdorp wasn't like that. Even when I grew up, the only thing that I knew about was some people using dagga. Today's a total different story.
So what's changed? To answer this question, the local CPF, or Community Policing Forum, decided that a drive-through on probably the most notorious street in the city, Civrite Street, would provide the answer. Our crew went with them. We hoped to sneak in and out without raising any suspicion. That proved impossible. As soon as we arrived in Leipart Street, about 200 meters from our destination, phone calls were already being made to drug dealers to notify them of our presence. Mariska Kutter is a journalist for the Krugersdorp News. During our conversation, she spoke about her experiences on drug raids and how lookouts and informants tip off the drug dealers on a frequent basis.
The police does about a raid once a month, where everyone will meet at the police station. By the time where you get to Civil Rights Street, where the drugs and the prostitutes are known to be, when you get there, it looks like a normal night in the suburb. And what we've actually learned is that there are in fact people in the police that tip off the drug dealers. And when you talk to the residents that live in the street, they will actually tell you, you know what, about a half an hour ago, they saw a police vehicle stop in the street, and literally all the drug dealers climbed in their cars and they left.
Wat zijn die matrassen?
Die zijn uitgesprongen, de vensters.
Hulle het die uitgespring?
Ja. Sien die winkeltjie?
Het hulle afgetip?
Ja, die winkeltjie is ingegaan.
Kykie, die is vir ons bietjie lekker drugs, maar kom eens kyk hierso. Dit is nie bietjie krummels en lyne en...
Dis nog vaak, hier is ons mense hier binne.
Ons moet hulle net kry.
Michael Krieger possesses an in-depth knowledge of the drug trade. Prior to his appointment as project manager at House Regeneration, he was involved in all aspects of the trade, which included the manufacturing of crystal meth and its distribution. He shared some shocking information about the police and their alleged involvement in the drug trade.
I believe that the police have got a two-part role in this. I do believe that the statement of the police in a whole is against drugs. But we do a lot of talks at schools, and I speak to the youths, and I'm talking primary school level now. And the guys that are, the kids tell me, the guys that are distributing the nyaupe, a lot of them are policemen. So that they are actually involved in the distribution of the narcotics.
The thing is, it's difficult to get rid of these guys because some of these SAP guys actually take bribes from them. It's known by a lot of the people that they actually say these guys, mostly of them Nigerians, they are actually called the ATMs of the police. So if the police needs money, they stop by, collect money. That's why they don't catch them or prosecute them.
The police, that's a touchy subject because I work hand in hand with the police. I've got a few good contacts in the police station, so I know that they are trying their best. Do I think they're doing enough? I don't really think so.
Warrant Officer Robbie Payne has served as a police officer for the past 25 years. He currently works in the Social Crime Prevention Department of the SAPS.
I don't think the police are not arresting the dealers. I think we do a lot. If you look at the arrest rate that we've got, we arrest a lot. Why are we not doing more? I don't understand. We are not doing more.
The police aren't doing anything about it because they get paid by the Nigerians. I've been where I went to go pick up cat and what. The police car stops in front of me, I stop behind it. The drug dealers still come, they give you what you want, what. If you tell them, yeah, but what about the police? They say, don't worry about the police.
We know for a fact these guys go run anything from 5,000 Rand upwards a month they get from the Nigerians, just to keep them out of trouble. So obviously, you've got Nigerians up here in Civil Rights, you've got Nigerians down here in town, you've got the guys in the Blickies. Everyone pays the police, so you've got 3 Nigerians paying you. That's easy 15 Rand a month.
How do you separate the good police from the bad police? Report the bad police that you know of. Report them give their names to the right people. There's officers that is there. There's anti-corruption lines. There's complaint lines available. Report them.
And you're confident something will be done?
I'm confident something will be done. Definitely there will be something done.
I'm a former police detective myself. I served 20 years in the SAPS in different specialized units. You don't become a police official because you're going to get a lot of money. You don't get a police official because you're going to get recognition from the community for what you do. You become a police official to serve your community, and it's never an excuse to get involved in crime. I think inherently it's about the character of a person, and I think sadly in the last decade or so the police recruiting methods has changed, and they've allowed people to slip into the police who are people of bad character, and those people of bad character eventually drag down the whole police service. So how do we solve this problem? We do it by sharpening up the recruitment policies and processes, and we make sure that we recruit honest people of good character into the police service, and then ultimately, just over a period of a decade or so, the problem should be rooted out. In the meantime, if we have police corruption, we apply the laws of the land, and you arrest people, you prosecute them, and you send them to prison.
Drug distribution goes up to a very high level within our policing system, as it does in the rest of the world.
Yes, it must be on a higher level, because somebody is fending for these guys. All of these guys can't be blind to see what's happening. And the population of Krugersdorp, the broader population of Krugersdorp knows exactly what's going on. But you phone these crime lines and all the rest, but it seems to me nothing gets done about the story.
Crime Stop has got anonymous lines. You get a reference number. You can follow up on that reference number. That's why I ask, if the person that say he didn't get help, he must follow it up, because he would have, when he reported it, get a reference number. You can follow it up.
But what if he did follow it up and still nothing was done?
Then they must go to the further step, or the next step. Report that in a higher office.
We then asked Officer Payne what residents should do if Crime Line proves ineffective and what he would recommend. He suggested that those who haven't been helped through Crime Line should come to the station. We told him they would not, as they wish to stay anonymous.
Okay, can I just... Everybody knows the people that work in town. Everybody knows people working in town. Everybody knows that we are working with children in town. If they say they can't come to the police station, they can meet any person on the street, or go to the church or whatever, give the information to somebody else to relay that to us. I don't think it's an excuse to say that they are scared to come here.
My personal opinion is that they could take a more aggressive approach, because it's all fair and well, you know, all the drug dealers' names, you've got all this, not evidence, but you've got information from people that give anonymous tip-offs. But then you sit on it and you sit on it and you sit on it. I believe that, you know, if they had a more aggressive team that specializes in it, it could maybe help, you know, start to take them out and eliminating the problem.
It creates a bigger hole if the kingpin is taken out. And how can you take the kingpin out if you don't have proper investigation? So you must work on that. So there's a lot of people that was arrested, big people that's arrested, and the case is pending. A lot of cases that is pending still.
Arno Krige is the CEO of House Regeneration. But many years ago, he was part of a huge drug syndicate which smuggled drugs to and from the Netherlands. After making a deal with the state, he became an undercover informant for SANAP and worked in the specialized unit.
Well, I think that one of the things that needs to be seriously looked at is to have specialized police units again, focusing on issues like drugs. Because you need a specialized guy. First of all, he needs to know the Drug Act properly. Even today, when we are dealing with magistrates in the courts, there's a lot of those people that don't know the Drug Act. They don't know what the Drug Act actually says. They don't know what their powers are when they're dealing with a drug addict in the courts. So in those days, we had specialized courts for drug cases where only the drug cases were handled. Nowadays, what happens is a guy gets bust, they find something on him. It's first of all have to go to a forensic laboratory. There's a backlog at the forensic laboratory for 12 months up to a year, 6 months up to a year before they get a result. So what happens? The court case gets postponed. They can't keep that guy in prison indefinitely. So what happens? He's out. Now, another big problem that is taking place is that at the courts, there are guys going around where for a set price, 1,500 rand, the docket disappears. The thing never appears on the roll, you follow. So there's a lot of corruption going on there because there's a lot of money involved. Now, the kind of guys that we were working with in those days were dedicated guys. They took their job seriously. They weren't bribable, they weren't corruptible. To find guys like that nowadays is difficult.
A lot of our dockets have been gone to court. We've arrested a lot of drug dealers before, or drug users, and a lot of our dockets have gone to court. Even for a gram of dagga we've been in court before. So if you don't tell me you can't be arrested for a gram of dagga, we've been in court for a gram. And his attorney pleaded guilty.
I think one of the challenges we face is that post-94, with the restructuring of many of the government departments, a lot of good things were closed down as well, inadvertently causing huge problems. I think if we focus on drug-related crimes specifically, we need to recognize that the senior police management, national police management, closed down the specialized police unit that investigated crimes, drug-related crimes. That led to an absolute grey area with a huge exit of expertise. And 20 years into democracy, we're now faced with extremely, if not the most serious threat against our people nationally.
The people who are mostly dealing drugs are your Nigerian nationals. They do not have the correct paperwork to be here, so it doesn't help the police lock them up, because when they get released, where do they go? They go straight to the streets. Somewhere there should be a department that should be involved in deporting them back, prosecuting them, fining them.
It's just amazing how these illegal Nigerians get into South Africa and where do they get the papers from to stay here. If you look at all these other alien guys coming here, they get caught and they get deported.
When a person is arrested for drug possession or drug dealing, person and docket has been opened, it must be investigated. Any person in our country's constitution has the right to bail. So when you've been arrested, you can apply for bail. If bail is granted to you, then or in court or at police station, you can be granted bail. So then you are allowed to go back. They must be found guilty in a court of law to be deported back, because otherwise, if he's legally in the country, why are you reporting him then? Then it will come back to police brutality. Police are just sitting on foreign nationals. The thing is, if you've arrested on a case, you are allowed to have bail. When you go to court, the court will justify the amount of bail. Then the case will be put on a court roll. And if found guilty, then you will go to prison or you will be deported back to your country. Otherwise, there's nothing else we can do. The people's got the rights.
In recent discussions we had with the Nigerian police force, the Nigerian police force made it clear that none of the asylum seekers that we admit in our country are actual asylum seekers. These are people running away from Nigeria or leaving Nigeria simply to come and pursue commercial crime interests in our country. It's extremely easy to get asylum seeker papers. Whether you get it legally or illegally, you will get it. The problem is that you can get it so easily legally, and with that asylum seeker paper, you have carte blanche to live in our country, to do in our country what you want. And because of the lax enforcement of our laws, which is part of the problem, they remain living in our country, conducting themselves, living their lives, getting married, having children, whilst they actually running criminal syndicates.
Later that evening, we finally made our way back to Sivrite Street, and it didn't disappoint. Apart from the prostitutes and street dealers, we couldn't help but notice the condition of some of the homes and flats. As we drove down the street, it became very obvious that we were in a very dangerous place. Notice how this guy wearing a baseball cap approaches this vehicle. It appeared as if they were in the middle of a drug deal. When he spots our cameras, he then acts as if he's giving directions to the driver. We suspect it was this man who ordered a vehicle to follow us. Luckily for the crew, the CPF realized early on that we had a tail.
Can't stop here right now.
It's fine, carry on. Sure.
You see how fast they get on you.
Sure. Now what do they do? Just watch you?
Watch where you go.
Now
where
they
you
will,
go.
yeah. Now they will follow you wherever you go. They will try and find out as much as they can of you, and then they'll start intimidating you.
When the guys from Civil Rights, they try and buy properties into the area. And then basically then what they'll do is they'll either use it as a cooking house or something like that, or they will bring the prostitutes over and keep it as a holding area for them. And they'll operate from there. Do any type of business, from moving drugs, prostitution itself, whatever they can think of, they will do it from there. And then once they are in, they will rip apart the whole house.
What happens is that the foreign nationals, they literally come to these houses. It's very old houses, you know, the wooden floors, the pressed ceilings, but people have moved away from CBD. So sometimes you'll find that this house will be, let's say, empty for a week or so. And then what they do is they move in there, they get girls and they stay there. They don't pay rent. A lot of these houses, the electricity is cut off, the water is cut off. If you go into these houses, they strip it of everything. The plugs, the taps. It's basically just a building standing, holes in the floor, and that's where they do drugs, cook drugs, sleep with clients. You know, it's become a slum. But they move in there and then police struggle to get them out because then they need to locate the owners.
Yes. Oh, bly jy hierso? Bly jy hierso?
Ja. Nee, my boyfriend.
What's your boyfriend's name? Where is he? Out doing what?
Where's the drugs? Where's the... Let me find it for you. Ek voel net ek moet daar kom tot gaan.
Sy doen niks vat in die sifre.
Ja.
Sy kry. As jy nie verstaan, die gebou is kondem. Dis nie vir sommige mense die gebou te bly nie.
Wat's daai?
As jy die gebou is kondem. Dis nie vir sommige mense die bly nie.
Yo! Kyk 'n nice badkamer, julle. Beautiful.
The CPF wanted to show us what a problem building hijacking is. Knowing that we couldn't go back to Sivright Street, they took us to Coronation Park, where two homeless addicts have hijacked a municipal building and have been living there in squalor for weeks.
Gentlemen, good evening. Why are you guys still here?
We will find a place.
The building was built just a few years ago, but is already in a state of disrepair. The addicts have ripped everything they deemed valuable from the building in order to fund their habit.
Hoekom is julle nog steeds hier?
Ons soek plek meneer, ons het nie die plek gekry vir nie.
Nee, maar dit is nie waar nie, want daar's 'n shelter ook daar.
Ja, by shelter hulle soek R20 per night en ons werk nie, ons het vat. Sometimes we organize the bottles, you see the cabs, just for food and stuff.
Well, the problem is I work for council, so I'll have to report you guys again.
Okay,
and you
sir.
know what's going to happen now? They're going to give you a final notice and then they're going to check you every day.
Okay, sir. I'll talk to the guys.
We'll give you a chance till Tuesday night, né? We know it's weekend, it's a bit difficult. We can't give you a chance till tomorrow night, but Tuesday, if you're here, there's going to be trouble.
Okay.
You've had ample warning now, né?
Okay, sir. I'll talk to them, sir.
And I think you must clean this place up before you leave here. It looks like a rubbish dump here.
Okay, sir.
This is municipal property, né?
Yes, sir. Okay. Good night, sir.
The mention of a shelter piqued our interest. Why would people live in such deplorable conditions when they could have warm showers and food at their disposal? We made our way to the Tower of Life in Krugersdorp to find out what they do.
What we do at Tower of Life is a shelter for destitute and homeless people. So basically it's the only place in the West Rand where you can come off the street and straight into here without having an admission form and using other various methods, you see. We run a nighttime program which starts at 4 o'clock and ends at 7 o'clock the next morning. What the people do, they come in, they pay 20 Rand. That 20 Rand entitles a meal, a warm bed and a shower. And then in the morning they leave at 7:30 with a breakfast and then just basic things that we can offer them. Most of the people who stay here were drug addicts that are recovering at the moment and trying to get themselves clean. So we have a program for here also, which is the task team. That's what we help them with in keeping them here, teaching them basic life skills, working around people, communication skills and stuff like that. So that when we send them out into the community, they are more rehabilitized and changed, and then that's what makes it better for them. A lot of people aren't helping the youth with like basic life skills, like actually coming off the street and going back into the community a changed person, doing things the right way. So us here at Tower of Life, as youngsters, we are able to do that much better because we understand. I mean, we also growing up, you see, and then there have been challenges for us also, but we also have overcome them. So we're just teaching the other youth how to overcome the same challenges.
Because our trip into Civrite Street brought such negative attention, we decided a break would be best for the safety of our film crew. So after laying low for a couple of weeks, we finally returned. This time, our friend decided to take us on a tour of the other drug stronghold in Krugersdorp, Blikkies.
We're going to Apple Park. It used to be called Blikkies as well. There's actually an article in the newspaper the other day about the name. It was like a tin shack. Houses they built there in 1892. It used to be belonged to the municipality for other underprivileged people. And they built the houses here, but now, today, a lot of these houses is no more the possessions of the people that used to stay here. Some of these drug lords bought some of these houses, and they're operating here as well.
So these houses are drug dens?
Some of them, yes, and these shops also. There is some of them standing also. You can see there in front on the left-hand side, on the corner there that guy comes, you see. You see this guy, he's waiting for business.
As we slowly approached, two men standing at the corner of the road noticed our cameras.
Put the camera down, Frankie. Put it down, put it down, put it down, put it down. Oh, it takes my number. Oh, no, it doesn't matter.
They say the drug dealers take your vehicle registration and allegedly hand it to the police, who then also allegedly hand them your address. This was concerning, but our attention was drawn to a nearby wall in a kid's playground. Painted on the walls of the playground were pleas from desperate parents and residents. These haunting messages read like something out of a Stephen King novel.
These guys are selling drugs to school children and minors. And they're actually destroying the lives of all the young people, white and black.
You drive past a church or a school and you actually see drug deals going on right in front of your eyes. So it's become more and more noticeable in Krugersdorp.
The age of users has most certainly dropped, where before, you weren't really exposed to hardcore drugs per se until you know, maybe matric, where now we've got children of 12, 13 years old being booked into our centre for being abusers of heroin and crack. So the age has dropped astronomically, and I believe it's getting even lower.
I think sadly we have a situation where our schools are often used, and we see it more and more, by drug dealers, because there's a young untapped market. We have many instances where children buy on school premises, where the dealers come up to the fences, etc., etc. Most schools have security measures in place, and the CPF encourages schools to appoint security guards as well to safeguard their own schools, to keep strangers away from the school. With the use of technology, with CCTV cameras, schools are able to disrupt the criminal activities of these gangs around their schools by simply making it too uncomfortable for them to operate at the school.
The dealers actually comes up to the school yard, standing by the fence, and in break period the kids will run to the fence, so much of the kids that the teachers can't stop them, and then they would buy drugs, drink alcohol, and really get messed up on break time.
So what the dealers do is that if someone's buying weed on a regular basis, they'll then lace the weed with a bit of nyaupe. And so that person will think, wow, this is really a good batch of weed. You know, I'll keep going back to that dealer. But then when that person doesn't have weed from that dealer again, he starts getting pains and aches. And he says, no, I've got to get, so that person has inevitably been hooked by the dealer. We've also got a case over here with one of our students where he was addicted to crystal meth. And now the dealer suggested, well, you know, when you're on crystal meth, you go for days and days without sleeping or eating. So the dealer suggested, listen, I've got something for you which will help you sleep. So he gave him some heroin. So after a while, the person stopped using crystal meth and was purely just using heroin. And so that's how the dealer got the person physically addicted to heroin. Because heroin is something which you can get physical withdrawals from. It's painful. With the other drugs you don't. So the dealers tend to try and get the people hooked onto heroin, and you also use a lot more in order to sustain yourself.
We've got a program that we actively do in Krugersdorp. We go to schools. We've got a close relationship with the schools, all of our schools in Krugersdorp. So we go to the schools calls us. We go to the school, if there's problems drug related, we test the child, or the school tests the child, and from there we act on that. We open a docket, we've got a diversion, informal diversion that we start. The NPA is involved there, the schools is involved there, actively. Once a month we take the children to court, and we try to give them the chance to right their ways.
Often the users are the people who are arrested, they're the people who are caught up in the crossfire, and we take them out of the system. Obviously, once they're taken out of the system, they've got the opportunity to go to rehab and to get their life sorted out, which is very positive. But I think something that's a bit of a negative is the fact that it's not that easy to get to the dealers, to the big suppliers, and that's where the focus should be. So we focus on the schools, yes, heavily, to get the dealers at the schools taken out so that we can take our schools back. And when I send my child to school every morning, I know that my child is actually in school and my child is safe. That my child is not having to rub shoulders with a drug dealer at school.
The police come often there with the dogs to smell out drugs and everything by classes, but they miss a lot. They really miss a lot because they haven't caught me, and they've come there with the dog sniffing on the keys and everything like 3 times a month, and they don't get all of it. A lot of people throw stuff in the dustbin, and when they search the dustbin they get a lot of stuff in the classes, but the kids don't admit that it was theirs, so they don't get caught. But really it's too much drugs in the school.
The realities that we've experienced in Krugersdorp is that we've had educators at schools dealing drugs, selling drugs to children. And sadly, we have more and more young people starting to deal at schools. People who are recruited, they're obviously users, they're recruited by the big dealers, and they then get this protected market in a school where they are the only dealer allowed to sell at the specific school. So obviously that corrupts the whole educational system. It's a big focus of the Community Police Forum to root this out. There's collaboration with the SAPS to manage the information that we get so that we can take these dealers out.
The kids can be targeted as the new users, definitely. That's why we go out to the schools and give our presentations. We inform them of what can happen if you use. And definitely for any person with bad intent, like people that selling drugs, they will target any person. Doesn't matter the age. If it's 10 years old, if it's 80 years old, if they can sell, they will do it. So that is what we're doing, is try to get the people to see what it's about, to inform them about the drugs and what it does to you as a person.
The teachers buy ecstasy from the kids at school, and it's bad knowing that. I was shocked when I first came to Krugersdorp because it isn't the way that I grew up there. It's just harsh.
What we need to do is we need to address the whole demand issue. The demand issue can only be addressed if we have proper drug prevention programs in place. Those programs need to be executed at school level. We've got people as young as 9 and 10 actively using drugs. It's not something that happens in your high school years. It's not something that you only go through when you're at varsity or when you work. It starts at primary school level. And hand in hand with the drug trade is obviously the trafficking in persons. You can't divorce the two. They're linked. So where you have drug trade, illicit drug trade, you will have trafficking in persons, which equals prostitution.
On the West Rand, there's a lot of human trafficking, girls being kept against their will, girls being used for various projects that people establish. We had a lady approximately 3 years ago who was held captive in a container, and she was used as a sexual human object. She managed to escape, and she actually got over the electric fence and came to our House of Restoration for help, literally with the burn marks of the electric fence on her body. There's been a major increase during the last couple of years. I would say especially probably the last 5-6 years, most definitely, especially in Siverite Street, the area where the main activities are. There used to be a couple of girls. At the moment, 180, 200 plus. They've also now moved into the Burgers Whip area, which is close nearby. Definite increase, yes, drastically.
Ek het begin eers net met cat gebruik toe ek 13 was, saam met 'n ou. Nie lank daarna nie het ek weggehardloop van die huis af met die ou Bloemfontein toe. Ek was omtrent daar vir 3 dae gewees. Toe ek nou daar so rukkie was, toe begin die polisie my daar soek omdat ek weggehardloop het. En net na daai 3 dae het ons op 'n bus geklim Durban toe. En toe ek in Durban was, toe het ek en hy begin heroin rook. En nie lank daarna het ons begin heroin spuit en crack begin rook. Hy het vir my vertel van hoe lekker dit is om dit te gebruik, hoe dit 'n mens beter maak voel, en hy het 'n manier gehad om vir my te sê doen dit. Hy het ook laat ek myself verkoop het in Durban om die geld te kry in Durban. Hy het geld gekry op 'n manier wat ek nooit van geweet het nie. Toe sê hy vir my ek moet ook begin geld maak. En toe was enigste oplossing prostitusie, want ek was minderjarig. Ek het nêrens eintlik my geboortesertifikaat niks gehad nie. Toe het hy vir my gesê ek kan dit gaan doen want dit sal die maklikste en die meeste geld inbring.
It was a friend of mine in industrial school, and she was taking heroin, and she took me with her on a binge, and I didn't know what it was going to do to me or the after effects. So eventually I got addicted to it, and then I was with a boyfriend at the time, so we were both addicted to it. I fell pregnant, and I gave birth, and I was clean for almost over 2 years, and my little boy was 10 years old, and he passed away. And after that, I just gave up. Started using again, and I got involved with the Nigerians.
Tiffany came to us on the 27th of January 2015. Tiffany was at a point where she was dying. She was severely thin. Her teeth were really falling out, bad pain, very, very ill. And she came to us with Mariska and begged us for help. The Cradle of Hope's House of Restoration is not a rehab. It's very difficult to help an active addict because we have women here that have never been addicts or that could be recovering addicts, and we have children here with their moms. So we can't have an active addict in our house. But due to the severity of Tiffany's state that she was in, we saw that she was dying and we decided to help her. She was also desperate for help. You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. Everybody wants to be helped, but they don't want to do the effort. And Tiffany was really, really rock bottom.
There are a lot of these girls standing on the streets. The only thing they know is drugs, prostitution. But when they get locked up, where do they go afterwards? They also run back to the streets. But you actually need a department that will come in and say, you know what, are you ready to get clean? Is there anyone here that wants help? And this is also where our government is failing us, because these girls, they use hard, dirty drugs. So it's not, you can't send them for a 30-day detox. You know, and we don't have, I know for a fact, Krugersdorp doesn't have facilities to help addicted girls, and also a lot of them gets abused. So the safe havens in our community are already overfull.
One of the major systemic challenges we have in the country is that although we have a drug master plan that is a beautiful document that tells us how to manage drug abuse in our country, in practice it does not work. In practice there's not enough money to fund the program or the different aspects of the program. We have limited rehab facilities. We have extremely few rehab facilities where you can get services for free, where you don't have to pay. Those have waiting lists of months. If I'm ready to go into rehab today and I commit myself, I have to get my name on a waiting list. 6 months down the line, when eventually I'm considered to go into rehab, I've changed my mind or I'm dead. That's the long and short.
It's actually it's a vicious circle. You stand on the street, sell your body, and to numb that feeling, because it's not a good feeling, it's not a nice feeling, you take drugs. And to get more drugs, you need to sell your body. The way it works is a lot of the girls, if they are on substances, they work for someone. A lot of the people that they work for can be quite wicked and quite, how can I say, they don't really have feeling.
Hy het meer en meer geld gesoek. En as ek nie my geld vir hom gegee het nie, het hy my geslaan en gesê ek moet terug aan straat toe. En wanneer ek eers nie wil gaan nie, het hy gesê, wel dan gaan ek jou terugstuur na jou maale toe, en jou maale gaan jy nie wil hê nie, hulle gaan jou een kant toe stuur en dan gaan jy op jou einde op jou eie wees. Hy het my teen terugkom gepraat, sodat hy seker is dat hy nooit uitgevang sal word nie. En ek weet ook dat hy het met vorige meisies ook gedoen het, presies dieselfde, hulle gaan verkoop het net om geld te kry, en dan sou hy hulle net gelos het, so hy sou dit met my ook een of ander stadium gedoen het.
But then you get a lot of people that are, they're good to you, you know. I mean, for instance, some of us girls, we don't eat, you know, we'll go on a drug binge and we don't eat at all. But then you get guys that they're there for you and they make sure you eat. They make sure that you sleep the right amount of time you need to sleep. You know, it's a good thing sometimes to have someone there. I've been lucky, I can say that.
I drive to work in the mornings before 7. And as I go down this road, every morning, Monday to Saturday, I can find at least 2 prostitutes still standing on the corner. And then
we're talking, this is 10 to 7 in the morning. Got all the school kids coming, walking down here to come to the school over down the road here. And they have to look at that. Most of the time these girls are still either drunk or still high or something.
Women who are drawn into prostitution because they have a drug habit fall pregnant. The sad reality is that they have to get rid of their children, but many of them are forced into termination of the pregnancies because they commercial entities, once they at that level of prostitution, they work for a boss, they've got a specific output, they need to service a specific number of clients, they can't afford to be pregnant, so they're forced often to have abortions. In working with many of these ladies, some of them would opt to carry to full term and not abort, which disrupts the service delivery to the pimp, obviously, because at some juncture she has to stop work, and that causes a lot of conflict. In those instances, we get then situations where often they are seriously physically abused, where they're thrown out and they have to make place for somebody else, and they can't continue working. Often at this juncture, when the child is born, they either keep the child, in very few of the cases, or the child would be given up for adoption, which happens in very few cases. But sadly, what happens a lot is that the child is then simply abandoned at one point. So whether it's a newborn baby, recently we had a baby left behind a McDonald's in one of the drug and prostitution hotspots. The assumption was that it was a baby of a prostitute. Baby was simply left there. We have at the moment approximately 20 babies, and many of them were abandoned by their mothers, and many of the mothers are actively involved in the drug trade.
I've been raped a lot. It's happened a lot. You know, it affects you, but not as it should. Yeah. About 3 months ago, I ran away. I went to Boksburg, and the second night that I was there, a guy tried to rape me in the back in the back of a warehouse, and I struggled with him to get away, and eventually I got away from him, but he kept pursuing me, and he was driving up towards me, and thank God I got closer to the main road before, because if I'd been like a block more down, he would have put me back in the car and he would have killed me, I'm sure.
If you look at the newspapers and the Krugersdorp newspaper, how many times it's written there about people and their parents writing letters for the kids to please come home and stop with this, and calling upon the police to get rid of these guys. But it seems to be like you're fighting a losing battle at this stage with the SAP.
I don't think that the police are doing what they're supposed to. There are guys that are good, but they are, like in anything in the world, there's a couple of rotten apples. A while back, I put an advert on the internet for me to work, and my very first client that phoned me was an Indian man, and he came in and he asked me what my fee was, and I replied to him, and he asked me if intercourse is included, and I said yes. And immediately he ripped out handcuffs, and he cuffed me, and he called in the guy that I'm staying with and demanded a bribe from him. When the guy that I stay with refused and wanted to investigate what was going on and phoned a police friend of his, the guys took off.
If it comes to diamonds, uncut diamonds, if it comes to raw gold, you have got very highly specialized police that take care of those things. And those guys get nailed because it's a small group that functions inside that circle. But now with drugs, it's not just the fact that there's a lot of money in circulation, because when you're talking about the drug industry, you're not just talking about drugs. You're talking about car theft. You're talking about housebreaking. You're talking about prostitution. You're talking about illegal firearms. Every single street crime relates in some way back to the drug industry. Follow? So we should be a lot more serious about our drug law enforcement than we are concerned about diamonds and gold. We know, for argument's sake, that there are cops involved that are protecting the Nigerians in Krugersdorp. That information has come to our knowledge very, very clearly. But now, how do you take that on? It's difficult. So, at the end of the day, the answer is what we are busy doing right now, and that's creating public awareness of what is really going down in our streets, and the lack of involvement from our government to do something constructive about it. The laws are there, the courts are there, the facilities are there to put these guys away. What we need to do is get rid of all the corruption that's going on, by making sure that people, when they are in charge of a particular department, are not corruptible. They can't be bought. And then also to make sure that people that are sitting in Parliament, that they take the welfare of our nation truly to heart, and make laws available through which people like ourselves have got a legal standing in society. And what I'm doing here at the moment, according to the Drug Rehabilitation Act, is illegal. And they've threatened me with closure, and they've threatened me with prison. But what I'm doing here is a lasting solution to many other people's lives. You follow? Because it is us taking care of our children, and taking care of our children in the light of proper moral and spiritual values that is going to determine where our nation is going to go. But if we don't have people in high places that are making sure that the laws that are there are making provision for the church to get involved, the community to get involved, the community to have something to say about a street corner where a Nigerian is operating openly, you follow? And that when it gets reported, something is going to take place there. I had another phone call this afternoon from a parent from Krugersdorp that said he is ready to load his gun, go into the streets and to start shooting people. That is how fed up he is with the situation that is going down in Krugersdorp. Now, we don't want that kind of riot to take place in our streets. So we believe that our government should take the responsibility to follow up on these things. And if people in high places are found to be involved with their finger in the drug industry, they should have the worst possible sentence that comes down on them. And they shouldn't be allowed to dodge what the consequences are, because it's people's lives that are at stake. Not just their future, their lives that are at stake. There are people dying in our streets because our government is not doing what they should be doing as far as the drug scene is concerned.
My honest opinion about human trafficking and drug war, we are winning it slowly, one day at a time. We are getting closer to our goal. Like me and Warrant Officer Payne, we are working with children in our schools. Those are the children that will become soon adults. So if you can educate them about the fight against drugs and make them a drug-free society, we will have a future. So we are starting from the grassroots level. We're working our way up to inform basically your school children what's the dangers of drugs. So by helping them, our next generation will be helped also.
So people often ask us, well, why do we get involved? Well, I get involved because this is my town. My children grow up here. My children live here. My children will one day have to make a living here, eke out a living. They go to school here. So if we don't take back our own towns and we don't get involved actively, and when actively I mean actively, not sitting on the couch discussing the problem or criticizing the police. If we don't actively get involved, there's never going to be change. And we can see change happening where the community gets involved. Do we have a magic solution? No. Are we going to eradicate crime in Krugersdorp? No, obviously we're not. But we're going to make it as safe as we can, and that has a direct correlation. The safety of our town has a direct correlation between the energy that we put in as well. That means endless nights working with the police, engaging the community, finding solutions, and working with them to make it safer. And ultimately, we believe that Krugersdorp is going to be a safe town, and it's going to be an example to many other towns in the country of a town where the community simply took back their town. We're not going to back off and allow the drug dealers to take over our town.